Hey, this is Saul Roth, actor, artist, and athlete, and I've got a story for you. A few years back, at a time I almost at least generated some studio interest on one of my scripts. So I was in a bar in Santa Monica, talking to some guy next to me about science fiction and this crazy story idea I had, and he stops me, little short guy, in a suit, and he stops me, and he goes, "Hold on, just hold on," and he goes away for a while. I see him talking to like a big group of like older people over here and some other people. And then all of a sudden, this huge group of people comes. And it was like and some of them were like older group. Everyone's dressed really nice. And he stops. And he goes, "This is one of the best movie pitches I've ever heard. Hang on a second." He's like, "Do that again." And everybody stopped and just looked at me. And I had been drinking. I wasn't like ready to give like a presentation. I was just bullshitting with the person next to me. But I'm one of those guys that, if you have like an opportunity, I'm gonna fucking run with it, right? So I grabbed the stool, I stood up on the stool, and I just pitched this fucking crazy epic adventure science fiction movie. And I'm talking about how there, the wasteland ruins, and there's these marauders, and this family in hiding's running, and in the background we see this beautiful domed city, and there's a chase. When they get right to the walls, the marauders attack, the family's killed, the little boy's there, and down descend these beautiful mechanical enhanced soldiers. Kill the marauder, bring the little boy inside. And that's the intro. And that starts off our story into where there's a defender candidate program where in the city everything's like ordered and ranked and beautiful, and your DNA is tested, and everything's like gives you a perfect direction in life, and it's controlled by an all-knowing computer network. That's voice activated. And so our hero, named Paragon, that starts in the beginning as an outlander, and his first outlander ever to be let into the city. Starts off in sanitation. Anyways, long story short, his dream is to be a defender, like the ones that saved him. He cheats a test, goes into the defender candidate training program, and that's creates his like big adventure. And when I was getting into the big pitch that they got excited about is the final scene, which is where there's this huge fight out. There's only one member of each group, which is like this co-ed, like really intense training, can become a defender. And they finally have to like climb out of this trap and up on this thing, and they fight it out on this like floating platform, and there's this fucking epic fighting scene. And Paragon's there, he fights his main nemesis, Shogun, he gets him down, boom! And then right there, he has the moment to take his life. He doesn't, he spares it, even though he had killed his friend earlier. And then he's the one who graduates. And he thinks he's done, he thinks that's the end. But it comes down, the original defender that saved his life originally, and lets him know he cheated the test, brings him up to a final test. What's interesting about this story, and what makes it different than most of the other action adventure science fiction, is as they progress through this program, they receive mechanical and biological upgrades. See, everyone inside the City of Aspheria, which is this domed mechanical city, is part machine. They're gradually upgraded as they progress through this training program to become super soldiers. So they'll have like mechanically enhanced skin, mechanical eyes, all these different things. So it's kind of this crazy story where as he progresses through this program, he becomes less and less human. And when he gets to the final test, that final fucking test that he's cheated, he's spent like years of his life trying to get to this point. He had to cheat the test just to be able to go through the training. He had to fight out all these rivals. Everything in his life comes out to this. For the final test, he has to turn off all the parts of him that aren't human. And he's like, "Oh my God, I haven't been fully biological in like forever," because, like I said, they're replacing little pieces, front coronal, cortex implants, all these like things that have been changed. So he turns it all off, and he has this final test where they tell him to execute these prisoners. And he's like, "What did they do wrong?" And they're just like, "Kill them." And then he does it. He doesn't want to, but he does it. And then there's this like quiet scene where they're like, "Okay." And he's waiting there to figure out if he had passed or not. And the way the test works is if you don't pass, you have to give up all of your upgrades, you're kicked out. This is like the big deal. Or you become a defender, which is like his life goal. And then in my original pitch, I've since changed the ending. I'll go into that later because that's to be happy. My original pitch, he thinks he passed. The alarms come, the defenders come to arrest him and not arrest him, but take his stuff, right? Because he's kicked out of the program, he's going to be banished. And he turns on all his electronica stuff, bashes through the defenders that come to get him, jumps out of the floating platform thing, smashes onto a flying vehicle, commandeers it, and rides off in sunset as a criminal. It's this really intense scene because the way it is this. as you become less and less human, the final test to see if you can defend the city is if you still had your morality. So when they commanded him to kill those people, he was supposed to say no. They wanted to see if there was enough humanity left in you that when given an immoral order, you would not do it. So even though the network seems to be kind of evil and makes everything all organized and rendered into like DNA sequences and stuff, it served a purpose, which was to save humanity from itself, which is why the main beautiful domed city of Aspheria is the last great city in this like industrial wasteland dystopian world. And so that was my pitch. But it was cooler than that. But that was the like basic idea of it. I'm just rambling now. And they loved it. Everybody starts clapping. I get like all these freaking cell cards with cell numbers and stuff. People start talking to me and said, we need you to sign an IP release. We need to get this. You need to come into the studio. I'm not going to tell you which studio because that's confidential. I was like, oh, let's go. Let's do it. You know, this is fucking awesome. I was so excited. I thought my dream would come true. And I was talking to him about how I didn't have to play but could I be attached as an actor? Because I'm an actor. You know, I write scripts too, but we were talking about that, and I was getting like so excited. That was like one of those moments you see in movies where it's like, fuck, you were in the right place at the right time, and you killed that motherfucker when you had that opportunity. I didn't cuss. I just get excited sometimes, so I like to explain it with that much enthusiasm. Anyways, the detail of that world is pretty cool. That's probably one of the coolest things I've written. There's these cool like shelled cloaked vehicles that look like the armor of an armadillo, and they move in all directions, and there's like a race and a fight scene in there. There's these like really intense visual scenes. That was before I wrote no budget minimalist stuff. Now I stick to minimalist stuff because I can't handle the ups and downs of trying to navigate Hollywood yet. Unless you want to help me. The reason why I mention the script is because it makes me feel fucking good about myself, even though that was depressing when it didn't happen. By the way, so I called their cell numbers, and they would always take my call. And they always expressed interest. They always wanted me to come in. They always wanted all these things to happen, but they never progressed all the way. So it's really weird because I would call the cell numbers to the studio execs, and they would answer my call in the middle of a meeting. It could be like a big meeting with like some tentpole release international, like movies you've heard of. I'm not going to give names, but like a movie you've heard of with like a $150 million, $200 million budget. And they're like, they'll stop and say, yep, what do you want? Mm-hmm. We're aware of it. And then they'd like put me off. Like, we're aware of it. Can't do that right now. Or can't talk about that right now. I'm in the meeting for this. We're aware of it. Yes. Interested, but don't want to, you know. They would like always answer my call. Doesn't matter when I called. Every single time they answered it. But they weren't happy. They had a super serious expression in their voice. And it never progressed. But I thought that was still cool. Still was an interesting anecdote. Would have been really cool if it actually worked out. Now, interesting enough, when I did all this networking and I'm trying to get this team together to build minimalist movies, and I'm using the social network of Stage 32 and all these other places, Facebook, Instagram, a producer, director, who's produced some big stuff for television, both in the USA and Europe, saw Roth the Audition, right? That solo piece I made on quarantine. That is the ode to the actor's monologue. By the way, I love the way it's written. I had written a whole like marketing thing, right? And when it got released and distributed on Tubi TV, which is owned by Fox, it's probably like the largest free streaming video like movie network. So it's like the free version of Netflix in the USA. They rewrote my tagline. It's not related, but we're talking about it now, so why don't I just go into it? And they said, this ode to the actor's monologue features a writer and director bringing film characters across genres to life that run the gamut of human emotion. That sounds better than what I wrote, so I'm going to take it. Thank you, Tubi TV. Anyways, so he watched that, and he was interested, and he said really cool stuff. He's like, that was a very bold, wise move. He's like, a lot of actors talk about doing stuff like that, but to actually do it and to pull it off, he was like really impressed. And then I wrote to him and said, well, thank you. I'm like, how can you help me do this? And I mentioned a bunch of shit I was trying to do. And then he said that he was interested personally himself in science fiction projects, but they had to be extremely well written and not necessarily low budget, just well written science fiction projects. So I'm like, I've got the script. I said, believe it or not, I have a big budget, crazy action adventure, amazing science fiction script that people love it when I pitch it to them and read it to them. And so I told him about that script, and he wanted to work the synopsis with me. So I sent him the synopsis. We worked the synopsis. I mentioned the whole fucking story. And what I envisioned in my head for the sequels, 2 and 3. And we're working the project. I'm going to finish the other two pieces. Pretty cool though, huh? This is Saul Roth. Like this video and subscribe, and leave your comments on your filmmaking adventures. I would talk more, but this iPhone's full.